All right, let's jump right into this. Have you ever wondered what happens when modern capitalism just collides head on with deeply rooted cultural heritage? Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to explore what I think is the ultimate thought experiment. What would actually happen if a nation decided to put a price tag on its very soul? Picture this. You wake up, you groggily check your phone, and you see this exact text. Breaking, France sells the Eiffel Tower. I mean, the sheer scale of the global shock would be absolutely unprecedented. The whole planet would literally stop for a second. You'd see this massive wave of panic, disbelief, and, let's be honest, probably a lot of nervous laughter. People would assume it's gotta be a joke, right? Fake news, or maybe some impossible billionaire stunt for a luxury brand. But then, as the truth actually spreads, the realization sets in. The most famous symbol of France, one of the most recognizable structures in all of human history, is no longer just a monument. It's a transaction. So that brings us to this really profound, visceral question. How can a nation sell its soul? How can a structure that is so much bigger than ownership, a landmark that's just intrinsically tied to human imagination, the elegance of France, and the spirit of Paris, suddenly become a mere sale? It's incredibly ironic, actually, considering the Eiffel Tower was originally built as a temporary structure for the 1889 World's Fair. It was literally supposed to be torn down. Yet today, it belongs, in a sense, to everyone who's ever looked at the Paris skyline and felt something stir inside them. But in this scenario, it's suddenly monetized. Here is our roadmap for today's Explainer. First, we'll look at the unthinkable headline. Second, why would France sell? Third, the ultimate bidding war. Fourth, the global ripple effect. And finally, the price of meaning. Let's get into it. Section 1. The unthinkable headline. A real cultural nightmare. The absolute second this headline drops, a symbol of national identity instantly morphs into a legal battlefield. I mean, think about the logistics here. Do the new owners control access? Do they control the branding? Could they, and this is a wild thought, rename the Eiffel Tower? Can they restrict filming rights? What about changing the day-to-day operations? The public panic would be matched only by the sheer, mind-bending complexity of untangling a cultural icon from public property. France would almost certainly slap heavy protections and preservation laws on it. So sure, a buyer might technically own it on paper, but the real power, that would still be shared with the public, the law, and honestly, history itself. Section 2. Why would France sell? Let's talk about the financial reality. The crucial thing to understand here is the desperate financial reality that could ever force this kind of sale. The potential catalysts are, frankly, massive. We're talking about a deep structural financial crisis, a situation where the government desperately needs to fund a massive economic recovery plan or staggering national deficits. Maybe they need to pay for vital infrastructure, hospitals, defense, or an incredibly expensive energy transition. Maybe they just need strategic leverage so badly that the Eiffel Tower is the only asset they think they can monetize without completely collapsing the nation. But look, no matter what excuse they give, the symbolism would be devastating. Because you know how it goes. Once you sell a symbol, people don't just ask what you sold. They immediately ask, okay, what are you willing to lose next? To the general public, this wouldn't just be an asset liquidation on a government spreadsheet. It would literally feel like watching a cherished family heirloom handed over to a total stranger. Paris would absolutely erupt, and not in celebration, but in fury and total heartbreak. You see, to the French public, the Eiffel Tower isn't just some random tourist attraction. It is the national landscape of memory. To watch it get sold off to a private entity, it would feel like a deep personal betrayal. You'd see massive outrage in the streets, protests in parliament, and ordinary citizens just stunned, unable to believe their country had reached a point where something like this was even possible. Moving on to Section 3. The ultimate bidding war. Because really, who buys the icon? Whoever actually buys this thing completely changes the narrative. On one side, you've got your billionaire buyer. This scenario is almost absurdly cinematic, right? They'd probably get up there and speak in this highly polished language about preservation and global responsibility. But let's be real, the public would instantly suspect vanity, global branding, and a desperate quest for immortality. Every single decision they made would become a massive political debate. But on the other side, what if it's a foreign government? Now that becomes an explosive geopolitical crisis. France would be widely accused of handing over its literal heritage for geopolitical influence, creating this staggering national embarrassment. The tower would instantly transform into a diplomatic trophy. It would represent a global contest for soft power rather than just being, a beautiful Parisian landmark. But what if the buyer isn't the richest guy in the room or the most aggressive nation, but rather the most emotionally clever? Enter the International Cultural Trust. Think of this as an entity focused strictly on preservation, free public access, and shared human heritage rather than just private possession. If the sale was framed as a kind of cultural rescue mission to fund public infrastructure while keeping the tower quote unquote French in spirit, well, it might actually be reluctantly accepted by the public. But it sparks this totally fascinating debate. Does simply paying the bills inherently change the meaning of the object itself? It shows that ownership in the modern world isn't always just about possession. Sometimes it's actually about responsibility. Section 4, the global ripple effect. Let's look at the tourism shockwave. So this naturally builds into an immediate, massive economic shockwave. Step 1, you get a huge initial surge in visitors. People would just rush to see the legendary monument before any possible changes take effect. Step 2, widespread, totally understandable fears of rising ticket prices and VIP exclusivity. Everyone would be asking, wait, is there going to be special access just for those who can pay a premium? Which brings us to step 3, a massive public backlash against premium commercialization. The public would be absolutely terrified that a shared global icon would devolve into this elite luxury product. The new owner would have to tread incredibly carefully here, because when a landmark is loved globally, the public isn't just a customer base. They are the real audience that ultimately decides if the sale is a massive success or a total scandal. And that leads to a very quiet yet terrifying fear taking root globally. Could heritage become collateral? I mean, think about it. If France can sell the Eiffel Tower, this ultimate monument of engineering and romance, what is stopping other nations from using their memory, their history, and their national stories as financial leverage? Building right on top of that, we have to ask the ultimate philosophical question. Could culture become an asset class? It really forces us to ask whether modern civilization views beauty as something sacred or if it's merely profitable on a balance sheet. People love the Eiffel Tower not because it performs well financially, but because it carries identity, it carries engineering pride. Selling it kind of feels like trying to put a price tag on a sunrise, you know? This naturally creates a sort of psychological contagion. Suddenly, other world monuments seem vulnerable, right? The Great Wall, the Taj Mahal, the pyramids, the Statue of Liberty, the Colosseum, ancient temples. If the Eiffel Tower can be sold, people all around the world would look at these completely untouchable icons and realize, oh, wow, they might not be immune to commercial logic either. It brings a sudden, very uncomfortable clarity to the situation. Heritage survives not because it's naturally invincible, but because we actively, consciously choose to protect it. Which brings us to Section 5, the price of meaning, the long-term aftermath. Just watch how the meaning of the tower would evolve over time. On day 1, it's a pure symbol of beauty and engineering, but by year 1, the courts are totally flooded with arguments, and it is morphed into a monument to legal complexity and politics. And jump ahead to decade 1, it literally becomes a mirror reflecting the commodification of history. Every single scaffold, every lighting change, every minor ticketing policy would carry heavy political meaning. A structure that once inspired simple, pure awe would now just inspire endless debate. It forces this incredibly powerful realization. Every civilization is only one bad decision away from treating its soul like an asset. We are looking completely objectively at the brutal lesson the world would learn about the fragility of cultural symbols when finance collides with history. Sure, some people would call this a visionary model for heritage financing, while others would call it a tragic loss of sovereignty dressed up as modernization. But the reality is that the lines between tragedy and innovation are so often drawn by the results, not the intentions. The true price of meaning. In the end, what would this world actually look like? Well, Paris would still be Paris, couples would absolutely still kiss beneath the lights of the tower, and tourists would still take millions of photos of it. But the story attached to that skyline, that would be forever altered. It would no longer just be a monument of engineering, it would be a monument to an age where symbols can be monetized, packaged, and transferred. This really isn't just about selling a tower made of metal, which leaves us with this final, highly provocative thought. Are even the most beloved landmarks truly outside the reach of economics? The Eiffel Tower would still stand, but the world would never, ever look at it the same way again. So if this explainer pulled you in, let us know in the comments below. Who do you think would actually buy it? I mean, what kind of entity would be willing to take on that incredible amount of global scrutiny? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating topic with us today. And as always, keep questioning the world around you.